We have got a big possible signing coming for the Baltimore Ravens in this offseason that has been full of extensions. We have another possible one right on the horizon. What is going on, everyone? My name is Sam Stewart. Hope everyone is doing well today. I want to remind everyone before we dive into the topic of this video to make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, if you're a true Ravens fan, you're going to need to subscribe to the channel, as Digest Media is your number one source for all Ravens news and updates. Obviously, as we get closer to the season, we'll be covering injuries, trades as well. We'll be covering that in season as well. And then once we get to the in-season portion of things, I'm really excited because we'll be talking about pregame coverage. We will be talking in some post-game analysis, breaking down what happened on the field and then off the field as well, like we've been doing this offseason. So let's go ahead and dive into the topic of today's video. Odafe is a man that could possibly be getting an extension soon, and this has been the extension offseason, if you will, for the Baltimore Ravens. Eric DeCosta has done a great job of extending the guys who have made a big impact and put the Ravens squad in this position to compete for a championship. And I think this offseason has been about extending guys who are going to create a bigger championship window. You know, I've said numerous times in the channel that the kind of championship window runs to about 2, maybe 3 years in the NFL. And the Ravens have had a lot of shots in the past years, but they're doing the right things to make sure that championship window stays open. And one of those things possibly could be extending Owe. So, you know, this is a guy who had a little bit of a slow start to his career, but has really came into his own, especially last year. And I think, you know, one of the decisions that DeCosta is going to have to make, and, you know, a video coming out soon about Tyler Linderbaum, you know, his impact on the center. And Bryce, my co-host on this channel, had a video recently about Jair Alexander. You know, where does the remaining money, you know, one has to consider, I think many fans already assume it's a given, that Lamar will be signed. I believe it is a given. To a big contract, making him, you know, his value is 10th overall right now in terms of contract. I believe that number will be bumped up on this next extension. It was the highest at the time. But, you know, with that money that's left, say Lamar is signed, or even if he isn't, where does the money need to go? Does it need to go to a possible cornerback like Jair Alexander? We've seen Malachi Starks drafted this year to help out that secondary that was the second worst in the league last year. We also saw some improvement from, you know, the secondary as a whole last year. Chuck Pagano is going to be in the secondary, really helping things out. We know what he's done with legendary players in pass coverage like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. And, you know, one thing I wanted to take a look at is an article I came across. And let's go ahead and look at OA's stats before we look at that, though. 10 sacks in 17 games last year, 9 tackles for loss, 23 QB hits, QBs. And, you know, you're going to feel this guy, even if he's not getting the sack. You know, 23 QB hits is no small number. So I wanted to get this article from this quote rather from John Alfano. The main obstacle standing in the way of the extension is, as always, the salary cap. Baltimore currently has just over $19 million in projected cap space for 2026. They still have a lot of work to do to fill out the roster. Additionally, that's before players such as center Tyler Linderbaum, safety Kyle Hamilton, and quarterback Lamar Jackson likely receive massive extensions. John Harbaugh, and we talked about this, you know, when players started showing up at the facility for this year. John Harbaugh is really loving the way Owe is looking right now. I'm really just happy with Odafe right now in terms of what he's done in the last 3 months. He looks good. He's put on 12 to 15 pounds of muscle. He's worked really hard. He's just really determined to be really great. Now, I think before we get into some of the things that have made Owe great over his career, I think it's important to kind of bring up this idea of, you know, what do the Ravens need right now? Is it a Tyler Linderbaum? Is it to extend Lamar? I think Lamar needs to be extended first and foremost. Kyle Hamilton needs to be extended as well. And to be honest, Linderbaum needs to be in there as well because, look, we've talked about this on a separate video that's going to be coming out soon. Like, the run game is totally dependent on him, and the center is such an important position. But, you know, I don't know necessarily if a lot of fans are going to agree with me out there that those positions need to come before Owe. You know, he's a guy that really takes his craft seriously, and everyone in the NFL does. But to go out there to put 12, 15 pounds of muscle on and to see the improvement we've already seen over his career. And this is the next quote I wanted to take a look at here, from John Alfano. A 2021 first-round draft pick out of Penn State, didn't have the best start of his career, recording just 13 sacks over his first 3 seasons. He broke out in a big way in 2024, however, recording 10 sacks to finish second on the team behind Kyle Van Noy with 12.5. Now, this is a guy who is willing to put the work in, who is going to benefit from an extension, obviously. He's earned it. Or maybe, I think the problem is, yes, he has extended, but has Linderbaum earned it more? And it's very tough to compare, the offensive side of the ball to the defensive side of the ball. And when we look at what this Ravens team needs the most, and it ultimately the season does not come down to one game, but if we look at that Bills last year, there was some telling signs. The running game struggled a bit in that game because, you saw the effectiveness when the running game is working versus Steelers in that playoff game, and how with Lamar, with Derrick Henry, they're truly unable to stop the Ravens offense. The defense and the run defense, especially in that game against the Bills had their way. Josh Allen working his way up the middle. The running attack for the Bills was taking advantage of, it seemed like, a Ravens defense that could not contain it. Now, with the imbalance, you need to stay balanced in life, you need to stay balanced in football. The weakness in the secondary for the Ravens is going to make things more difficult all around. Because, look, teams, if you are so worried about the secondary, you're going to emphasize the pass game in your defense, and the run game is going to suffer a bit. It's just the way it goes. But look, the balance, that has been, I feel it has been addressed properly, because one thing I thought going into this offseason, there'd be a lot of emphasis on corners. But, the drafting of Starks, guys like Nate Wiggins, the development, bringing in Chuck Pagano, this has been very balanced. And I think we have to remember that when it comes to Owe, is, we do need help on the defensive side of the ball, probably more so than the offensive side of the ball. If you look at the season as a whole, yes, there was some drops, obviously, and Lamar had a big interception. But here's the thing. Everyone just needs to take a second and realize, sometimes it just comes down to execution. So extending guys who are, who are needed to what is central on the team. And I think that we could say, look, and Owe is one of those guys. He definitely broke out last year. I think he has earned an extension the way he played last year, and especially the way he's worked in the offseason. I think you'll see it even more this year that he has earned an extension. But the point I am making is that you can't necessarily say, oh, the money needs to go to the defense. Money needs to go to the defense, because there was more struggles, I would say, on the defensive side of the ball, and I think most Ravens fans would agree with me. But I really like the way that DeCosta has handled this offseason. I want you to let me know in the comments as we wrap this video up what you think of how DeCosta has handled this offseason and who you think deserves the extension first. Obviously, a lot of people might say Lamar, but what do you think? Is it Lamar? Is it Tyler Linderbaum? Is it Odafe Uwe? Let me know in the comments. Once again, my name is Sam Stewart. This has been Ravens Digest. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.